This. Milani have our little cheerleader. She's doing Hey guys, it's me. And today, Jigglypuff and Mr. Mario. So, we're supposed to be at so I'm not, because I don't feel like going on. And we pick spots. We pick new spots every day now because we're sick of it. And then we pick new spots. All the lots are to give me the best to do my
Study those spelling words. What have you been doing so far?
Oh my gosh, hide it.
Get it out.
I'll be right back. Miss Wilcox? Okay, so hello. We have a happy new year. I know we're all happy, but I still think there's some drama. People are ganging up on Aiden. This guy in my classmate, he's in my social media. People are ganging up on him and throwing snowballs and stuff. I'm telling people to gang up on him. Like, that's shady. You did not need to do that. You know he didn't deserve it.
Stop, Jackson.
Stop.
Stop. It ain't funny.
I'm glad I'm not triggered right now.
Time to talk, and I'll have plenty of time to bring the puppet back here when I do fifth grade. I'll make a point to do that.
Why don't I have a thumb?
How many days of school till the end now?
Okay, Ella, look at Ella, look at my hand.
2 more months? It's not 2 more months.
Ella, look at my hand.
We get out in June, I think. Oh, it can't be. Well, it still feels like the first month of school.
Hey, get those words.
She switches our desks like every single time. Really? I'm gonna show my face. Just show.
See, I pay attention in fifth grade. I know how to spell all of those words.
So I'm still paying attention at home. Yes,
Well, not
Are you sure about that? You're not smart. I'm sure telling people to gang up on your boyfriend throw snowballs is not really smart. That's not my giant.
They get alphabet backwards.
Ditto, and Vitro. What the heck is that? It's just a purple bee.
C-Y-X.
Ditto and I don't know. What's his name? Victory Bell?
CYXWBUCSRQPO.
In after before the there's someone Ariana gonna I'm not gonna say it.
In other words, ABC.
The name is supposed to end
Get ready for the timer.
Timer my butt.
Go off in a minute. When it does, that means you're going to be
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, we already did our setup.
I just recorded that.
He did?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to go change that. Now set a different timer.
We already did our setup.
Okay, I heard you that you already did your setup.
We did
I did all the things. She's so stupid. I hate this story. She's like a witch that trying to puppets. I really have the Barbie girl which means like, okay, so did you ever do your homework or what? Or like, what do you guys want now? Do you guys like do centers now sometimes? Or like, what?
Wait, guys, is everybody done with the centers?
Yeah?
Yeah?
No, not everybody is.
I am. Guys, raise your hand if you're
Work on your
if you're not done.
while we watch this movie.
Oh, okay. Alright, that's good. Wait, can I have the light? Wait, I can't see the movie from my seat.
Think on the floor.
Oh my god, it's called Dip Night. She said we couldn't be on the floor.
No. She meant you have to stay in the chair.
I can't see the movie from my chair.
Emphatically told you. Just stay in. Is this like a right? No, you're fine. Everybody's fine.
Ray Harryhausen. Ray Harryhausen.
Ray Harryhausen. Ray Harryhausen monster, you know, they're all beautiful.
Wait, what movie is that?
Show me.
Is this an actual movie? Oh, that's for all. That's all this. Oh, yeah. What's this? Oh, no. These are the backs.
I feel like they coded
This is the nice.
Like anyone watching it? Sorry, look at my things and I'm looking at you and you're looking at me thinking. She's
I love Ray Harryhausen's films. Those were a huge influence on me as a kid.
I never knew who Ray Harryhausen was. I just saw these things happening. It was only later that I discovered there was one guy who could life these things.
That is very difficult to define myself in 2 words. I would say I was a filmmaker rather than just an animator or a special
It looks
effects.
like Bill
I'm in on the story at the beginning. Sometimes I initiate the story. I wear many different hats in the production. I even, at the end of the day, go out and help sell the picture.
Ray is the only technician really who is an October. It is a very unique position. There really isn't anyone else like it. He has a huge body of work. There's nobody else who was doing that sort of work. I mean, he's the only person. He himself is deeply influenced by the master, Louis O'Brien, who done King Kong.
When I first saw King Kong in 1933, I wanted to do something in the film. Well, in 1933, when I was 13, King Kong, nothing like it had been put on the screen.
Truly, the thrill of thrills. Don't miss it this time.
And it haunted me for years, even though it was a little jerky. This creature is amazing, you know, it's so big, you know. It just left an enormous impression. It wasn't only the technical expertise, it was the whole production of the film. They took you by the hand from the mundane world of the Depression and brought you into the most outrageous fantasy that's ever been put on the screen. It really set me off on my career. I didn't know how the film was made when I first saw it. Finally, it came out in magazines how King Kong was stop motion, and that intrigued me. So I started experimenting on my own as a hobby in my garage. I took courses in photography at USC, night school, and I studied various things, art direction, film editing. It gradually developed from a hobby into a profession. I couldn't find anybody to make the figures, so I had to learn to make them myself. I couldn't find anybody to photograph it, so I had to learn photography and learn to do things myself. Stop motion animation is really basically the same principle as the animated cartoon. Only instead of using flat drawings, you use a dimensional model. This has a rubber coating on the outside of the metal armature, and as the shutter is closed on one frame of film, you move it slightly. You move the arms, and you have to keep it all in synchronization. And then when you get hundreds of these still pictures, it gives the illusion that the thing is moving on its own. In my early days, I did mostly experiments with dinosaurs. both 18, and we both loved King Kong, and I met his dinosaurs in his garage. I said, oh God, this is incredible. You build this, do you? He said, yes. Let me show you a piece of film I did. And he showed me a little tiny piece of 5mm film with his dinosaurs roaming over a prehistoric landscape. I said,
You can just write
you know something I got to tell you? He said, when I said, I think you're going to be my friend for life. I wanted to make a film called Evolution. It was about the development of life on Earth. And then Fantasia came along, and so I abandoned it. And they could do it so much better with Disney's. But I had all these tests that I had made for dinosaurs for Evolution. And I showed them to George Pal.
George Pal was a European animator who went to America to actually make a series of films there and was commissioned by Paramount to make a Puppetoon series.
My first professional job was with George Pal Puppetoons before the war. The George Pal technique, all the models were cut out ahead of time in wood. So there wasn't much creativity. You simply substituted a new figure.
There was very little for an animator to put his own personality into, but it was an enormous part of Ray's early career. When he came out of the army in around about 1946, he found 1,000 foot of Kodak 16mm footage. So it was out of date, so they were throwing it out. So he used that for his first films, and those were the Mother Goose stories that became the first of the fairy tales.
The fairy tales were really what I call my teething rings.
That's where he really learned so much about filmmaking, and he went on to make Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, Rapunzel, King Midas, and eventually Tortoise and the Hare. His mother and father helped him. His mother made a lot of the clothes for the fairy tales, and his father obviously did a lot of the machining, the armatures and everything, based on Ray's design. Fred and Martha, his parents, were, you know, a huge part of his life. Most parents would have said, no, you've got to be a doctor or a plumber.
I was very fortunate, I should say, that my father knew a lot about engineering and machine work, and he used to make a lot of my armatures on the lathe at home.
And Fred continued to make the armatures until just after First Man in the Moon, when he died. So all the armatures seen in all the feature films were made by Fred.
My first introduction to the work of Ray Harryhausen was the Mother Goose stories, actually, which at the time I was not aware that they were Ray Harryhausen's work. I was about 9 or 10 years old, and this, you know, it was all cozy, Christmas Eve, and this film came on, which was Hansel and Gretel, and I could not believe it. I was just so drawn into it, and the magic of it. I don't know back then if I knew how stop frame animation was done, but I could see there were no strings. I think Ray Harryhausen is really the grandfather of stop frame animation. I mean, I know that there was Willis O'Brien as the great-grandfather.
I had kept in touch with Willis O'Brien. I had met him when I was still in high school. I called him up at MGM, and he kindly invited me over. I brought some of my dinosaurs in my suitcase and showed them to him. And finally, after Marion Cooper and Willis O'Brien were going to make Mighty Joe Young, I became Willis O'Brien's assistant.
His imagination would require that he use the best, most fantastic techniques available.
Well, I don't know, it's hard to say, but it's just another way of making films. I think I would prefer to make films with the model animation rather than CGI today.
Schneer was a young producer working at Columbia, and he saw The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and wanted to meet Ray. And Charles said, well, I want to make a movie about a giant octopus that attacks San Francisco. They did this film together. They had terrible problems with the San Francisco Bridge.
We were obliged to submit the script that came from Beneath the Sea to the city fathers for approval so we could get the cooperation of the police. When they read the script, they turned it down because they said that it will make the public lose confidence that a creature can pull down the Golden Gate Bridge. So we had to do things through devious means. We put a camera in the back of a bakery truck and went back and forth on the bridge to get projection plates secretly. I mean, it's a fantasy film, and I'm sure that no one lost confidence in the Golden Gate Bridge because a giant octopus pulled it down.
The octopus It Came from Beneath the Sea only had 6 legs. That was because of the budget restrictions. Ray had to save money, and therefore he dropped 2 legs, literally dropped 2 legs, so it's only got 6. So you never see all of the tentacles out at one time because he hid them. Ray loved calling it the sextopus.
They just asked if we're friends.
When we did Pirates of the Caribbean here at ILM, all the guys that worked on that, were big Harryhausen fans.
Yes, we are.
And, for example, the Kraken had 6 legs because the octopus had a limited number of legs, of course, in King Beneath the Sea. And a lot of the feeling of Davy, that sort of, in-your-face performance came right from seeing Ray's film where it's an in-your-face performance going on,
When Harryhausen animated the octopus for It Came from Beneath the Sea, I can imagine it must have been pretty difficult for him to get character into tentacles. There's no face. We have a huge advantage when we created the tentacles for Dr. Octopus because we created faces, basically. So we would have a certain opening of the mechanical aspects of it that would create anger. We would have another one that would be curiosity, another one that would be sadness. And each tentacle had a range of emotion. I think it's pretty obvious that Sam Raimi is a huge fan of Ray Harryhausen. If you take a look at the work in Spider-Man 2, Dr. Octopus.
Ray's father, with Ray, Fred Harryhausen. Ray built into the design 3 nodules on each flying saucer so that he could actually suspend the actual machine, and from each of these nodules would come up to the aerial brace.
He used wire braces. If you think of a string puppet, you have a cross like that from which the strings hang that you can manipulate the puppet. He invented a geared aerial brace where it would tilt the flying saucers so they'd be able to go in at a certain angle.
I knocked over the Washington Monument long before Tim Burton did.
These films, when I saw them, you felt the hand of an artist.